Thank you,
All right,
everybody
perfect.
for attending. I'm really excited to have my guest today, Matt Manassi. Matt has some of the best hair in pickleball, I gotta say, and he is
Pretty. I may be losing.
host of Pickleball TV, celebrity pickleball coach to the stars. And someone said something on LinkedIn, which I really agree with, which is you are one of the best ambassadors for pickleball for what you do in the space. So I just want to say thank you because you're entertaining on the TV. You do some great interviews, and I'm really excited to dive in today to the business aspect, which you don't really talk about much,
Of
right? You,
course.
you don't really talk about the business side. So I kind of want to wind back the clock prior to you getting into entrepreneurship. Like, can you just share like where you're from and your backstory in terms of like getting into pickleball?
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. Awesome to be on. Yeah, from Pennsylvania originally. Grew up there until I was about 14. Went to high school in South Florida for tennis. Played, junior tennis competitively. Played collegiate tennis at USC and then Purdue. Um, Noticed or kind of realized quickly at the end of my college career and at the beginning that pro tennis wasn't going to be on the cards for me. And I wanted to be a sports agent for the longest time. I worked at Babolat for 2 years. I thought that would get me closer to the world of being a pro tennis sports agent. But I ended up kind of wanting to be back on court. I got my first college coaching job at Wisconsin. Um, did that for 2 years, then Duke 2 years, Oklahoma State for 2 years, and then Duke for 2 years. So I was a college coach for 6 years total. Then was a pro tennis coach right before the pandemic, kind of falling out of love with it. It was my last ditch effort to like, is this what I want to do? Um, and now, yeah, then got into pickleball just out of boredom during the pandemic. I think someone said could they not hear? Is that what someone said? No audio, can't hear the audio.
All right, we will do. Oh, it's working fine for
Someone
me.
said it's working fine. Everyone else said it's
Okay, okay.
all right. Chris, you got to fix your audio. It's not a us thing. It's a you thing. Um, but yeah, no, I found I had played pickleball once before on a tennis recruiting trip years prior. Didn't really love it. I actually like hated it. I didn't understand the game. The bounces were weird. The kitchen, all of that. Um, And then for whatever reason, it just clicked during the pandemic. Loved it right away. Felt like I could learn it fast. And after 6 months of playing in Erie, Pennsylvania, I was quickly the best there. And I was like, I want to play a pro event. Long story short, I got connected to Tony Giannone and Ryan Sherry. Trained with Ryan Sherry for a week in South Florida. Played pro events. Ended up meeting Ben Johns and Simone Jardim, and then it was kind of off to the races. But my first week in California for that pro event in August of 2020, I met Doug Ellen, who is the creator of Entourage. And the places we went and the people we all like played with and met that week, I was like, wow, I really should come to California. Pickleball could be kind of that vehicle to network and do something in entertainment. It seems that LA is the place for it. Like everyone is playing it. It's bigger than golf. Um, and I made the move like a month later.
In entrepreneurship, there's like key decisions that we make, right? And a lot of people have opportunities. Like,
Yeah.
what would you say were like the pivotal when you look back, like the moments where you're like, if I had not made that decision or overcome that fear, because there's so many people in the space, and I think that mindset is a challenge, and they're in that fear. So I'm just curious to know what those pivotal moments for you were.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I was a college tennis coach, I was always restricted from being like creative and being my own entrepreneur because I was the assistant coach. Um, and that like really bothered me. And then I also thought like, all right, if I am the head coach, are there going to be like restrictions as well? Like, can I really make this thing my own? Can I, is the salary, do I determine that myself, or am I always going to have to answer to someone else to have, with my schedule, with my salary, with my decisions, how I represent the university versus, how I am as a person. So I feel like the pandemic was a blessing because that was the first time in a long time where no one was doing anything. All my friends, both inside of tennis and outside of tennis, everyone was at a halt. And I started creating TikToks and just doing things that were a little bit more outside of my usual day to day. And it gave me kind of a creative outlet to just be myself and have fun. And in terms of critical decisions, yeah, that week in California, I was like saying yes to everything. Anywhere where I could play and meet cool people. I said yes to. And then when I got back to Pennsylvania after that week in LA, I was like, look, I need to move to California. Like it was just a decision. And right away, I was like, where can I find a place to stay? And I was asking people to stay in their guest house. Through a friend of a friend, I ended up finding a 350 square foot garage studio that I ended up staying for almost 2 years out here. And it was just a split decision. It felt right. If now was the time to make that move. Um, and then it was saying yes to a lot of different things out here. You know, I was a high school tennis coach for a little bit. I worked at Uomo, this my buddy's clothing company. I just did odds and ends, um, little teaching here and there before I really got plugged into the Riviera Country Club, which was months and months of bothering them before I met someone that got me in the door. And then it was a couple clinics and chasing them to get the job there. It's a lot of my manager always says the follow up is the job,
Right.
and the follow up it's everything in pickleball, in business, and in relationships, all of it.
You used a word there which I want to dive into, which was bothering. Where do you think is the line there between like persistence? I always remember a time when I got a job working on a video games magazine at the age of 16. And the guy said to me, the editor, he
Yeah,
said, Simon, I didn't hire you because you're a good writer. I hired you because you were persistent and I could teach you on the job. I would rather have someone that is persistent that I could
for sure.
teach than have someone that's really good but doesn't have the drive. So where do you think the line is where it comes to
Right.
that being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people want to hire people or be around people that are capable, and that get along with people and all of that. But you want someone that's going to work hard and be there and be reliable and be on time or be early, um, and really chase after what they want, which is success and all of those things. Um, yeah, I mean, for me, I think persistence and following up has been something I've been good at my whole life. It just so happened, I think, my early 30s, 4 years ago, things started to finally go my way a little bit. And it was a lot of, I mean, I don't know, my first 2 years in LA, I would say I did not turn down a lesson. I did not. It didn't matter if it was Monday or if it was Sunday. It was a yes to everything, whether it was at the Riv or driving to a private home. It was always a yes. And I think when you're building something, you need to be reliable, and your best ability is availability, as they say. So. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of following up and being persistent versus bothering people, yes, there's the tactful way to do it all. You don't need to follow up on a Monday. Maybe wait till Tuesday or Wednesday. Everyone's bogged down on a Monday. So just little things to make sure you're not annoying, and maybe have some personal anecdotes when you're following up. Maybe sometimes when you follow up about something, it's not even to ask for something, but just, hey, checking in, saying hello. I noticed this. Oh, I just read this article. It reminded me of you. And look, you don't do that with everybody. You don't have time to do that with everybody. But um, I think that's a normal way to build relationships, is to not just be the person that's there asking for stuff, but just being there to be there.
I remember our first connection. Actually, I started pickleball September last year, and then I went to a PPA and I connected with you just briefly there. And I think that really helps, right? Like getting out from behind the computer for some
Yep,
people and going to these events. And they're at the point now.
for
They're
sure,
at the point now still where they're fairly small. The players are walking around. You can connect, right? And the PPA have done a pretty good job of that.
for sure,
Um,
for sure. And I think, to your credit, that's something that Yeah, there's nothing beats in-person communication. Putting a face to, to a name and to a screen name, and all of this stuff is huge. So getting out there and meeting people in person is always the way to do it.
Let's talk about uh, the celebrity door opening and how maybe things started to change for you then.
Yeah,
Obviously, you've been featured in Variety and the New York Post and all these kind of publications. For those listening who
yeah,
have a business, right? I also want to talk about like opportunities here and getting into the media and leveraging that because I think it's even though some
mm,
people may not work with celebrities or want to be a host, right? I think still there's the lessons of the doors that
right.
open and then what can actually come from that and how to kind of use that to your advantage. So how did kind of it start with the celebrity side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it really started. I mean, my first. I don't even want to really say the guy's name because I'm not a huge fan, but my first run-in with celebrity, other than Doug Ellen, who I'm a huge fan of and friend of, and he kind of, I think, opened my eyes to what LA could be, and I think Entourage opened my eyes to what LA could be. But um, my first run-in with celebrity in LA was with Randall Emmett, who was on a reality show through my buddy Wes Burrows, and a lot of things in Los Angeles, in the celebrity scene, is kind of knowing who you want to be around, what celebrities you want to tie your wagon to, and maybe who you don't want to be around. And I think maybe picking who you don't want to associate with is potentially more important than who you do want to associate with, because there can be some negatives if you hang around the wrong people. I think I made those decisions pretty early in a good way in LA, surrounding myself with the right types of people, whether they were celebrities or non-celebrities. I've so many former clients that are now friends that are just really good people, that have great careers in entertainment, out of entertainment, whatever, and there are people that really root for you, when you were nobody, when you're just their pickleball coach. Um, but in terms, yeah, the Riviera Country Club definitely helped get things off the ground. My first clinic there was with the wives of some pretty prominent people. The likes of Ari Emanuel, Larry David, those types, Jim Burkess. Um, and that was kind of my first run in with like real celebrity. And for me, in terms of taking that into press and all of that, I mean, I think it was had to be around 6 8 months before any type of press went around it. It wasn't my goal to get press around it. Uh, I was just building community at the Riv. I thought it was really cool that rival agencies and big time actors and all of that stuff could come together on a pickleball court, and pickleball is what was bringing them together. I thought that was a fun story, especially because my love for Entourage would have never seen Ari Gold and the rival agent come together on a Sunday morning, on their own to play anything. So that was cool, but for me, it was more about giving value. I created this really cool paddle for my first like celebrity crew called the Sunday Crew Paddle. Wilson helped me make it at the time. Dane Iliff from the kitchen was the one who drew that cool design. Um, and it was always about giving. And then once I went on KTLA here to talk about pickleball, then some random press stuff came to me, but it was always about being respectful of the clients that I had. If a newspaper wanted a quote, I'd always make sure I'd ask them. I'd ask my clients if I could mention their name. So it was always just making sure you're not overstepping the relationship. And I think when it was since it was done in a way to really promote the sport and get the sport moving, I think it benefited everyone. Obviously, it did benefit me. Craig Coyne, who wrote the first Vanity Fair article, who coined me the coach to the stars. I mean, that was a very cool, you know, nickname that now kind of once it's in writing, you kind of can run with it. And I've been really able to use that and then chase some other things like now in the broadcasting world.
Yeah. You'd mentioned something earlier around like it being a good story. Can you just explain to like the viewers what the media wants and how they can potentially take something? Because maybe someone's watching who's got a product or they're thinking about a product and everyone wants to kind of get themselves out there. But how important is that story aspect? And what do you think the media is really looking for?
This, The story's everything. I mean, I was actually having a conversation with my manager last night about Matthew McConaughey, and if you watch everything he does lately, especially, he has a story for everything. Anything that's brought up on a podcast, you could like his tuna fish. I don't know if you've seen the tuna fish Matthew McConaughey recipe that's been going around. It has over 1 billion impressions. So he was asked about the tuna fish he makes, the tuna fish salad he makes on the weekly, and he had this whole story, what he puts in it, and it's everything. He has a story with sounds, and he brings you in, and it's the media wants a great soundbite. They want a great story. They want something that is going to interest people, and is some of it fabricated at times? Yes, I mean it's got to be. I can't imagine that everyone is as interesting as they make themselves out to be on the media. Um, but boring doesn't get you any news. So you have to be interesting. You have to have a story that has to be a personal connection. There's got to be something that brings people in, and friendship, community. Obviously, the negatives like kicking someone in the face during pickleball, that'll get some views as well. But there's all types of stories that'll get people interested, and you just have to find the story that works for your business, for you, and then people will get involved and get behind you.
Let's talk about the segue to Pickleball TV. Had you wanted to present, and how did that kind of opportunity come up? And then we'll dive into developing camera confidence, which I think would help everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always wanted to do TV. I called Steve Weissman, who is a big voice at Tennis Channel. And now he's done some pickleball stuff with us. I knew Steve just through the tennis world when I was the coach at Duke University, and I think probably when I was at Oklahoma State as well. And I remember I called Steve when I was leaving Duke, and I was like, I really want to get into broadcasting. I love tennis. At this time, I didn't even know what pickleball was. And he's like, yeah, to be in broadcasting, and look, he was right for the most part. You probably have to be a former top 10 tennis player, or uh, be in journalist school or broadcasting school like he did at Northwestern, and earn your keep, and go the hard yards and be at a radio station in some podunk town for 2 years, and then climb the ladders into TV and all of that stuff. Um, Luckily, pickleball helped me fast track a lot of things. But anyway, back to kind of how I got into it. Once pickleball was building and I was in LA, I had started making some connections with some people at Tennis Channel, Adam Friedman being one, who's like one of the best guys ever, and really, really pushed pickleball onto the radar of Tennis Channel a couple years ago. And we were talking at a public park once, and I was like, yeah, why, Tennis Channel should own this. And he's like, I've been trying to tell them. And I was like, well, why don't you get the brass at Tennis Channel, Ken Solomon, Bob Wiley, all the C-level guys, have them come out to the Riviera Country Club for an afternoon. I'll host them. No one will pay. I'll make sure balls are ready. We'll have the paddles, and we'll just have a great afternoon, and they can learn pickleball and see if it's something they like. And they came out, and I can't imagine it would be more than a couple months after that, pickleball was on Tennis Channel. And I was lucky enough where the Coach of the Stars thing was going on. I was playing professionally a little bit, but less at that point, and I had a little bit of a name in the space. And they gave me a chance to get on the headset in their studios and call matches, in a room in Santa Monica. And that was kind of my start, just calling matches with either Cameron Irwin or Michelle McMahon, and it slowly turned into doing it live on site. And then I don't know, they believed in me before I did, I'm sure, in terms of on camera presence. I started hosting a lot of events, live events, corporate branded events, where I'd be on a microphone for hours. That gave me the most confidence of anything, to do it in a live space. Um, in front of people where you're obviously getting paid a good amount to do it, and you have to perform, and you have to be loud and energetic and know your stuff and keep an event going. So that gave me more confidence than anything. And a year ago, 2 weeks, Worlds last year in Dallas was my first time really being live on camera, on air. We opened for for right after Sports Center on ESPN2. Um, and it was just something where I was thrown into it, and you either you either sink or swim, right?
Right. Yeah. It sounds to me like there's a bit of being willing to ask. There's also a bit of being willing to take an idea and run with it. And there's also a bit of saying, like, okay, I'm going to go and add value here without expecting anything in return. And because of that, uh, opportunities come up. Which would you say out of those three is kind of the most important?
I think I mean, all three. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that all the time, giving without expecting. It's just something you should do. If once you start expecting things in return, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And as much as he can preach that, and as much as I understand it, it's really tough to always have that mindset.
Mm.
To give and not expect something to come your way is very difficult. And it's not 100%. Oh, I'm just such this great person that gives and never expects, because I'd be lying to you if that was the case. But I think in a very business oriented mindset of if there's an event or something where I can bring people or businesses together to benefit the overall event, of course, yes, I would love to benefit as well. But I think about it right away, and there's never in my mind there's never anything that's like too big. And I think maybe my manager would be annoyed with that of like, oh, I give him ideas all the time that he's like, well, you're not XYZ. You're not famous yet. You're not, you only have 18,000 Instagram followers. Like that's not going to work. But it's like, well, it's worked for other people. Why not work for me? And I'm doing this Delta Sky Miles experience in March that we put together, that sold out. That's awesome, and that came to me very randomly through a friend. But now I was playing padel yesterday, or paddle, in Century City, and I looked across, and Delta just did a partnership with Shake Shack. So I look across from the padel courts, and there's Shake Shack right there, and I'm like, why don't we do a paddle experience and bring Shake Shack and Delta together? So like immediately, I text my contact from Delta. I do know someone at Shake Shack. I wrote him. He hasn't responded yet, but it's like you need to take action. If you have an idea and you think it's worthwhile and you think people can benefit from it, you should take action and send that email, shoot that text, make that call. Um, I just think people act slowly and are scared to voice their opinions and take action. And I think if you do, the worst that can happen is no. Um, and you just got to roll with it.
That's something I notice about your, particularly your stories, is that you're comfortable with yourself. But I think that people struggle with that. How important do you think that getting on camera is, and actually your face being out there now on social versus kind of, brands that come out and just they're posting pictures of paddles or their products without the founder really being seen?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important, to build a brand and to have talent behind it and have a voice and a face is important. Like I'm very excited that next year in 2025 with Pickleball TV, that we're going to be doing so much more together, from social media to Pickleball Live and post game shows and 30-minute weekly shows and all these different things that are going to get, first of all, Pickleball TV out to the public in a major way, but there's going to be voices and faces behind that. And I think that's important. People follow people. They don't follow just products, or just ideas. They want the person behind it, and they want the story behind that as well. I think if you look at not to call out the kitchen versus Barstool, but if you want to look at that as comparison, and the kitchen's done a great job, and the Dink as well, to build their business and to build a massive following. Um, but you don't really know the talent behind it, right? It's just a aggregate of points and of memes and stories, but there's no voice. Whereas if you look at Barstool, you clearly know that Dave Portnoy and Brown and Chicken Fry, and you have all the podcasts, and like there's a whole host of talent that's behind all their stories and memes and things that come around, and people follow people. They want to hear from the founders and the stories behind that. So if you can have a great product and then also have the talent backing it and the stories behind that, then you have a home run.
Yeah, love it. Um, I want to dive into brand deals and the world of sponsorships. I want to go on like the grassroots basic level here of explaining like how they work, how they don't work, and then we can dive into like some strategic stuff. But can you just explain like the current space right now versus what it was a year ago and the changes in that brand sponsorship deals space?
Yeah. I mean, I think for you're talking in like pickleball and pickleball,
Yeah, generally, like
right? You're talking
brand deals
pickleball
between
specifically.
people, how they actually happen, what people are really looking for, especially now
Yeah.
where we're at versus where it
I
used to
mean,
be.
yeah. I mean, if you're looking at paddle, like in terms of just the endemic space with paddles and shoes and all that stuff, um, I think I think it's getting harder to get money out of companies. I think now that there's some consolidation in the space, and people realize that the pros only have a certain amount of value, it's going to be hard to get money per se from these companies because they're spending more on marketing dollars and all of that, and they're trying to keep up with paddle technologies, and companies are spending a lot. Um, so I think I have noticed less of a spend on maybe players that are, let's call it, 25 to 100. And then it's really the big names that are getting paid big money, your top 10 on either side. And then it's dropping off considerably after that because brands realize, all right, well, is someone ranked 25 in the world really selling paddles for me? Probably not.
Right.
Ben Johns is, Tyson, Riley, Catherine, Annalie, you can go down the list of who maybe is really influencing people to purchase things. Beyond that, though, you can have a really big, if you can build your social and have fun content, you can really push a product maybe better than some of the players that are at the top. So there's two ways to go about it. If you can really create a great brand and social following and funny stories and great reels, and you're just a content machine, you're always going to have the ability to make money and get paid with brand sponsorships. In terms of developing relationships with the brand, look, there's people that are running these brands and these accounts. So you have to remember when you're approaching these brands and these people that they're people like you or I, and they have families, and it's a job, and you need to be respectful, and you can't just ask for everything on day one. Maybe if we're talking about a paddle, it's like, hey, I tried your paddle. If there's something that I could try that's different, if you could maybe, I'd really appreciate it. And I'm really interested in sponsorship, but I'd love to make sure that it's the paddle for me first. That's a way to develop a relationship with the company. With shoes, if you're writing K Swiss, well, how are you going to ask for money from K Swiss if you haven't tried their shoes yet? So maybe it's like, all right, someone told me K Swiss was really great. I just want to try it. If you'd be comfortable sending me one pair so I can try it, I'd really love that. Blah blah blah, and they'll probably do it, and then you go from there. You build the relationship, and maybe it doesn't turn into anything, and maybe it does. So I think it's just important to be respectful of the people that are behind these brands and realize that it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. If they're going to pay you or give you free product, whatever it may be, you need to deliver value to them as well. And if you do, you're going to see some rewards in the long run.
I really think it goes a long way to actually rep the products that you actually enjoy first. Like, I wear my Sierra BNs every
Yes.
game, right? And it's because they're great glasses and I actually use them. I'm talking about them
Right.
and promoting them because I use them all the time, you know? So
For
I
sure.
think that's, important to have that authenticity. And I think people are getting a little bit smarter in terms of what stuff people are just pushing for the product side of it, don't you think? Where it's not really an authentic.
100%. Yeah, I mean, no, and I won't hate on the players or name them specifically because I like them, and if they're getting paid, great. But there's like these I think it like you pick up the ball with like a certain thing on the paddle, it sticks or whatever, and it's like a pro player peddling that, and it's like how that's not how unauthentic is that? Obviously, player X doesn't need that on their paddle to pick up a ball. So if it's not authentic, I don't think it's gonna sell. Um, but look, I agree with you. If it's a product you like and you use it anyway, that's the company you need to go right and knock down their door and say, I use your product for free as it is, and I'm paying for it, and I love it. Is there a way that I can help you promote your product and go from there? I mean, I went to a talk a couple months ago at this Google event, and Maria Sharapova, I forget is it Supergoop? I think she's with Supergoop, the sunscreen brand.
Mm.
And when she was on tour, that was what she was using, and she was buying it at Sephora or whatever the hell it was, and loved it. And then eventually was like, wrote them, was like, I'm using this anyway. I love it. Can I come in and meet with you guys? And she met with the staff. I think at the time she said between 7 and 10 employees. And obviously, being Maria Sharapova helps a little bit, but she was able to invest in the company, not just take a retainer. And it ended up selling, I think, for $750 million. So I imagine she got a very nice chunk of change for whatever she put in at the beginning. So there's great stories like that where if it's something you love and it's authentic and it's true to you, then you're going to benefit.
Yeah. Talking of what companies are looking for and diving into a bit more on the personal branding, like how important is the social side, and what have you noticed for you that's had a good uptake to increase kind of your personal branding and following? Like what are the brands actually looking for in reality?
Yeah, it's so interesting because the social scene is very difficult right now. Like growth seems on Instagram seems almost like stagnant unless you're. I don't know. I've seen good growth on some accounts, like Jack Monroe posts every single day about some type of tip or trick shot. Roscoe's been growing a little bit significantly, but it depends what you want out of your account. So you have to know what lane you want to be in. Do you want to be trick shots? Do you want to be education? Do you want to be lifestyle? Do you want to be a combination of all three? Um, what brands want is they want great engagement. They don't necessarily care about how big your following is, but they want to know that the following you have cares about what you are
Quality over
talking about.
quantity.
So they rather have a correct. So they want to know that you're connecting with your audience, even if it is only 20,000 followers versus a million. Um, so it's I mean a kind of a classic example, and like Jamie Foxx has the best paddle. His audience might not care about pickleball, even though he has 17 million followers, because they might not feel like they don't play pickleball. They follow Jamie because they love his movies and his talent and everything else, and that's important. Whereas Ben Johns has 75,000 followers, and he's turned Yola from having no paddle at all to the biggest company going on because people really care about Ben Johns and pickleball. So it's just really knowing what the companies want, what they want to get to. If you do a brand partnership like over a reel, making sure that you deliver or over deliver on what they're wanting, doing it in a timely manner. Hit all the deliverables, and yeah, and if you're not comfortable with a certain rate, then maybe don't do it. Or if it's a lower rate, but you think it's something that enhances your profile and it just looks good, and it's a great brand you want to work with, then do it. Because I know a lot of people that have done stuff for free with massive brands, and you or I are none the wiser that they didn't get paid.
Right.
But we're like, oh wow, the perceptions, everything.
Yeah. Over the past year, what kind of products and companies that have come out, and in terms of like maybe their marketing or branding or positioning, have really stood out to you, and why? because obviously you have a lot of companies reach out and you really know what's happening in the space. But I'm just with so many different people, like what do you think they've done better than most?
Yeah, I mean, just to give a quick shout out to the companies I do work with, I'm with K Swiss. Obviously, you can see here for clothing and shoes, and they're coming out with some pretty awesome shoes next year. So I'm very excited that they're diving really deep into pickleball, especially in 25. Crush Yard, which is my venue business that's in Charleston, and we're moving into Orlando next month, as well as Nashville and Huntsville, Alabama next year. So we'll have 4 locations by March. So I'm very excited about that. Copper Compression. I have my paddle company, Sweet Spot and Aliyat. And we're in Dick's Sporting Goods and really ramping up there, especially into the new year. But in terms of companies that I am very impressed with, I mean, the spend on Yola's side, I mean, they must be. Selkirk, I think, has dropped the spend a little bit. Yola is just, they're doing great. They seem to be conquering every single market possible, but their spend must be out of control as well. So, as long as they're financially stable, good for them because they're spending on, um, player sponsorships. They're spending on marketing in completely new markets, in Asia and South America, everywhere. So I am impressed just with their ability to be everywhere, all at once. And it seems every single player is using their paddle. I think the paddle's a little too hot and potentially illegal, so I hope that changes. But no, there's always new companies coming into the sport. Um, I'm impressed. I'm just impressed with how eager and driven every single company is. You got PB Five Star coming in. You have just everything. Pickleball TV is trying to make a massive splash and doing a great job. PPA from where they were 2 years ago till now is unbelievable. It's really everybody is constantly trying to make a bigger move, and I think that's why pickleball is exploding the way it has.
Going back to Jula, with what happened with the Gen 3 paddles and talking specifically about dealing with adversity, do you think that situation turned out to be a positive in the end? And also, what have some situations that you've experienced have actually turned into kind of positives when you thought maybe they were a negative? Because that was pretty big for the space, right? That was a
Yeah.
big situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still ongoing. I think that issue is still, very relevant because it's changed the way we're thinking about paddle technology and the restrictions on how fast things can be and just all those different, measurements. Yeah, it was huge. I think they were pushing the limits on how fast things can be and how much spin things can have and all of that. We're seeing that into next year with this paddle testing that it's obviously things are going to change. Um, they did a good job of handling it. They also have they they had an advantage by just being in every single market and being in the hands of every single player anyway. So, having the number one player in the world, Ben Johns, on your side, and having a host of 20 other players behind you, and being in a million different clubs and having partnerships with everybody. I mean, no one's bailing on you.
Right.
But they're a company that I think has good integrity. I know. I was with Yola for a little bit. I know all of the staff. They're very nice. They're trying to do the right thing. So I think they handled it the best they could, and I think we'll see the paddles next year. What that looks like in terms of a negative that turned into a positive for me. I mean that it seems to happen all the time. I can't even really think of one particular case, but a lot of times when a door closes, something else opens. That's even better. Um, it's hard to see that at the time. You never see it at the time. I get told no for things all the time, and I'm disappointed. But then I don't know. You move on, and something else comes because you're chasing the next thing, and you're just trying to work. I got told no for the Super Bowl commercial, this Michelob commercial. I didn't get involved in the Dink movie, and those are two things that I really wanted to do. Uh, but hey. you move on, and I'm sure something bigger and better is there.
Going back to the TV side, and actually you mentioned in movies, I was watching an interview with Dana White talking about the UFC and how that took off, and really a reality show was the thing that really kind of took that to the next level in terms of like the entertainment side
Yeah.
of pickleball and people viewing, the sport versus what really needs to happen to take it like 10x up, like TV wise. Like, what are some kind of wild ideas that you have or things that you think need to happen for it to kind of break through to more mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, people have talked about reality shows and getting the personality side of it. I mean, there's a lot of good-looking guys and girls on tour now. You could put them in a house and have some type of prize at the end, and have it be this great thing. I mean, there's people talking about that all the time and have pitch shows like that, and we'll see if it happens. Um, Obviously, this Dink movie should help things to get it in the mainstream. I mean, Ben Stiller in a movie about pickleball, like a dodgeball type movie, should be huge for the sport. If done right, I don't expect it to be the first or last movie about pickleball. I'm sure there'll be more. I mean, look, there's going to be a Super Bowl commercial with pickleball in it. So it's it's not slowing down. I mean, I think it's already very mainstream. And I think the pro side to become more mainstream, we're still in its early phases. I mean, the PPA really started, let's call it 4 years ago, and that's not a long time. Like, I think people, are expecting this to be tennis already, or they want it to be like football. It's like these leagues have been around for a long, long time, and have not always had the success they've had now. So it takes time. Pickleball TV is a big part of that, making sure the production's solid, the commentary's solid, the stories that we're telling about these players, and about the leagues and about the places they go, and all of that need to be top notch. So it's just some things take time, unfortunately. But fortunately for us, we're all still early. I think. It's not at its height yet. There's still people. I travel across the country, the world. There's plenty of people that have still never even heard of pickleball. So you can't say that about tennis. You can't say that about soccer. Like, everyone's heard of it. They know what it is, and they could probably tell you a pro player. But I've been in many Ubers where they're like, "What's that? Never heard of it."
Right.
So we're not there yet, and we just have to keep pushing.
Talking about that stage of the market, when it comes to someone like who has a product or a service, how important do you think it is for them to be positioning to new players versus existing players to grow their business?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. Are you talking about like sponsoring
Yeah,
pro
if
players,
someone has a
or
bag or
just
a
like
paddle
like
company, or
just
even as a coach, like the people watching this are going to be club owners, coaches, those who have
yeah.
products and services, right? Like apparel. So in terms of like the demographic to go through with positioning, where do you think the best opportunity is right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, it depends how much cash you have and what your backing is, and all of that. But if you're like bootstrapping something and you're starting out slow, like, just I would look locally first about like people that have influence in your area at your club, making sure that they're pushing your product and doing it in a way that's infectious and great. Then you can stem out from there. I mean, I remember I worked at Babolat for 2 years, but I remember when I was 12, that was when Babolat really made this massive push in the U.S. with Tom Russ, who was like head of marketing way back then, and he was like the guy that was putting it in every single club pro's hand. Like, that's who was selling those products, were the club pro who was teaching 7 hours a day and was the major influence in every town. That's who was pushing Babolat. Yes, they had, I think, Carlos Moya, and obviously they ended up getting Andy Roddick, and then now it's Nadal and everybody else. But back then, no one knew what it was, and it was getting key influencers, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay for it. It's just showing people that you care about them. All right, maybe you give them something free, and they have some type of benefit for it. But I've seen communities being built, not maybe not so much on the product side, but like in Erie, Pennsylvania, for example. Two friends of mine, Elena and Mike Arnold, who had never picked up a pickleball paddle or a racket for that matter, in any other sport ahead of the pandemic. They now run a 400 member club in Erie, Pennsylvania, because they're just give value back to the community constantly, and they love what they do, and you can see it, and it's people want to be around people that they like, and if you can be that person, no matter what you're selling or what you're doing, you're going to have success.
Yeah, awesome. Who do you think out of the pros and maybe the people that you've interviewed are like the smartest entrepreneurs, and what are they, not aside from their like status, but as a player, but also just what you've noticed from all the players that you've interviewed, like they're sharp when it comes to business. Like what's different with them versus maybe some others? Not to judge anyone, but just like standout people.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like Zane Navratil for one is probably like the best that I've seen. Tyson too, but Tyson's done it obviously with like being in the sport longer, having kind of that look to him, and being one of those legacy players, and built a great camp. So, I mean, both of them have done a great job. But Zane with the podcast and the teaching online, and just at Worlds he did a live podcast above Rain Energy Drink all day long, every day when he wasn't playing. Um, he's someone that I think, in terms of my job on the desk and asking questions of people, he appreciates when I ask tough questions or uncomfortable questions or whatever they may be, or thoughtful questions, and because I think he sees the bigger picture of where we're trying to grow the sport, and he wants to grow the personalities and show that side to it. So people like him get it, and they realize that if the sport's going to grow, it's got to be from them and the personalities that are shown and the stories behind it. So he'd probably be my number one pick.
Awesome. Talking of, going a bit deeper, what if, behind the scenes of a picklepreneur, and let's call it that, it's not all roses, right? Like there's the up days of when you get sales and opportunities come, but like the downs,
Yeah.
right? The downs, the mental health side of it. Like what have been some of your struggles and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship, and I guess it's funny because I never think of myself as like an entrepreneur, even though I guess that's what I'm doing, because I don't really work for anybody. But yeah, I think there's an ease when you just have a 9 to 5 of you do the task you're being told, you go in, you have somewhere to go to every day, which in itself is great. Like I miss that a little bit of having somewhere to go and being around your coworkers and building that rapport. But at the same time, there's a lack of freedom with that, right? You have to go in 9 to 5 every day. You have to ask somebody to take XYZ off. You have to ask someone for a raise and go over bonus reviews and all of that stuff. So it really, it's which freedom do you want? In terms of my switch, I feel so kind of alive and turned like not turned on, but turned on in terms of like emotionally when I'm at the desk and I'm doing a live event like 12 days in Dallas. You don't have a chance to breathe, right? I'm on air from I call times 10 a.m. Sometimes we finish at 8:45. You're flipping through interviews, watching matches around. You're in it, and it's electric. And then I come home, and it's like, oh shit, back to some emails, back to hustling on the next thing, but I don't really have like a schedule, and I think that is the toughest part. And it's just like, all right, well, you can have your day of rest, your 2 days of rest, and then it's like, all right, what are my priorities? I wanna stay in shape so that even though I'm not trying to play at a pro level anymore, that it looks like I can, and that I can maintain it when I need to. I want to play pickleball, so I'll do both of those things: gym, pickleball. I joined this new social club, so I go there during the day with my laptop, so I don't just sit at my apartment and turn on the TV instead. I try to, make meetings with clients and different things that are just networking. So it's all about, all right, what are my priorities? How do I'm someone who doesn't do well sitting still.
Yeah.
Uh, I need to be moving. Um, and the mental health side of it is like, yeah, unfortunately, you see a lot, especially in LA, and I'm sure it's the same for anyone, whether you're in EPA or here, but it's hard to like not compare, right? Like I'm in the pickleball space, but I'm also comparing myself to people like in the entertainment space because I'm trying to do more TV stuff and all of that. So you see a lot of successes around you and massive successes, and it's hard not to compare. But you got to look. It's everyone runs their own race. I'm very lucky to be in a position I'm in, especially compared to 4 years ago. There's a lot of people that. That support me, both my family and friends and people I don't know and all of that stuff. So the pickleball community is great, and I think you just have to be appreciative of that because I've gone to so many places in this country and around the world, and when they find out that I can play pickleball at a decent level, you're automatically invited in, and I think that's pretty special. That it goes beyond, it transcends language and all of that stuff. It's really big, and it's special.
Just finally on the interview section, what do you think? Because I know that a lot of coaches are going to be watching this, or those who maybe are doing free lessons with their friends, but they've not transited into being a coach. What do you think makes a great pickleball coach, like all round, that you've noticed in your experience?
Yeah, communication, both before and after. If someone's trying to get to you to schedule something, do not wait 2 days to respond to a text or an email. Like, yeah, look, people, if they're messaging you to get on court, they probably want a response pretty quickly. So I understand no one wants to be on their phone all the time, but responding to people in a timely manner is huge. I hear complaints about that all the time about other coaches. So respond. If you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time for a lesson, be there 10 minutes early, have the basket ready, be ready to go. Make sure your shoelaces are tied and you look presentable. I'm all about presentation being very important. If you look the part, they're going to believe you. Um, know your stuff. Keep up with the new techniques. Watch a lot of Ben Johns. If you can teach someone the easy technique, that's the way to do it, and his is that. So stick to the basics. But when you're on court, look, you're there for two reasons. Potentially, this person that hired you just wants to have like a fun escape for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is of their day. So you're there to make sure they have a good time, and you're there to make sure that they learn something. If they leave having those two things happen and they leave with a smile, you've done your job, and I think everyone's going to be happy.
What are some big no-nos? Just stuff with maybe you've experienced, which you're like, that was a mistake that I made, or that I've seen from others.
Yeah, because I don't make mistakes. No, uh, let's see. I don't know. I think people that just like talk too much, especially in pickleball, there's so many rules, there's so many different techniques, there's so many different shots and scenarios, but it's like, especially at the beginning, early on when someone is not, they're new to pickleball and you're trying to get them to love it, it's not about you showing them how much you know. Um, I mean, a little bit of the old adage is like, it's not how much you know, but showing them that you care first, then they'll care that you know, whatever the hell that was. But it's like, just go, like, make sure they have fun early on, because that's like coaches. A lot of people once they progress in pickleball, then go away from the coach. So like, or most of people that are coaching pickleball or tennis or whatever it is, you're getting a lot of like beginners or people that are just trying to get better at their game, whatever. It's like you need to make them fall in love with it, get obsessed with it, get obsessed with learning, get obsessed with being there and sweating and all of that. And you can't do that if you talk them to the ground. So make sure they're moving and having fun and yeah, just make sure they learn something.
I think sometimes, especially when you're doing it for the first time or new, that there can be a tendency, like you say, to want to add so much, but that creates overwhelm, and then they're in their head,
Yeah,
and then they don't perform, right? So
correct.
there's a benefit of keeping things simple, finding out what their expectations are, and not
Yeah,
trying to like pile so much on
correct.
in a
I mean,
short
I
period of
think
time.
yeah, I mean, I think there's an evaluation process of like, all right, let's have you played tennis before? Have you, how athletic are you? Whatever. You dink a little bit and see how they hit the ball. Are they holding the grip right? And then it's like, okay, what do you really want to get out of this hour? If it's a one-on-one, versus a three and me, or you have four people on the court, whatever it is. But it's like, what do you want to get out of this? What's the thing you want to work on? And hopefully they're able to tell you. And if it's like, oh, I really just want to work on my forehand drive today, then okay, you know what you want to do. Like I've had people come out for lessons that literally just want to work on a forehand drive for an hour, and like it's not exciting for me.
Right.
I but if that's what they want and they're excited about it, and you can see progress, and you can do different variations that's going to get to that same end result, and you can do progressions with it, then they've had a successful lesson. Um, Look, it's not about when you're teaching. Unfortunately, it's not about you. It's about it's about them, and I think a lot of people forget that, not just in teaching, but in all kinds of businesses, that everything is sales. Everything is about the person that's coming to you, and making them feel a certain way, and if you can have that top of mind, then you're doing a good job. And trust me, I've lost sight of that plenty, but you can always right the ship.
Matt, thank you so much for this interview portion. How can people reach out to you if they want to, and what kind of opportunities are you looking for?
Yeah, I really want to grow like a bigger recreational tournament, kind of with a fun brand. That would be fun, like a tournament series with a fun brand or group that's not serious, something that can just build a community. I'd like to do more of that. I want to continue on the broadcasting side of things. I just really, I don't know, wherever I can grow, that would be awesome. And then you can find me on my, Instagram's the easiest, at Matt Manassi. Um, I don't care if I give my email out, matt.manassi@gmail.com, if you need to shoot me something. Um, yeah, I'm pretty. I respond to most things. I mean, I've gotten a lot of leads and fun opportunities by just responding to DMs, or whatever it may be, and you hear a lot of people that don't respond. So, um, being responsive is key.
Awesome.